Welcome to CWN, your Cold War News. I'm Bryce.
And I'm Emily Welch.
We have a very special lineup for you. The Cold War is a very controversial topic. We'll be covering it from beginning to end. We're receiving breaking news now in the Cold War.
It's 1945 and tensions are growing between the two world superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. The two countries have opposing governments, the U.S. being a democracy while the Soviet Union boasts a communist state. Conferences are currently being held to try and keep the peace between these countries. While the U.S. wants to reach a resolution, the Soviet Union's leader, Joseph Stalin, continues to break agreements and gain power and control in Eastern Europe. As the story continues to develop, we will keep our viewers updated.
Tonight in sports, there's some competitive racing going on. We have highlights from the much-anticipated space race between the U.S. and Soviet Union. The first race was won by the Soviet Union by putting a satellite into orbit around the Earth. This put the USSR and communism on the map as a true world power. Round 2 was once again won by the Soviets, being the first country to put a man into space. Now the power of the Soviet Union was getting to shine through. This devastated the U.S. and was embarrassing to the government and its people. Round 3 was very important to the U.S., and it was the race to the moon. They had nothing left to lose and put all they had into this race. This exhausting feat resulted in U.S. victory and one giant leap forward for mankind. That's all for sports. Now for weather with Emily Welch.
We currently have a watch on the Bay of Pigs near Cuba as a storm of CIA-trained Cuban rebels is brewing. It appears that the storm has reached maximum size and there is no chance of Fidel Castro being overthrown as dictator. That's a major failure for the United States and the CIA. The arms race is beginning to hit closer to home now, with the Soviet Union supplying Cuba with nuclear missiles. Now that the country is loaded with missiles, the future forecast could bring showers of nuclear proportions. The next 2 weeks show that a blockade will be moving into the Cuban area from the United States. Once that blockade clears out, the chance of nuclear showers from Cuba will be eliminated. Negotiations between President Kennedy and Khrushchev will lead to the removal of nuclear missiles from Turkey by the United States and Cuba by the USSR. That's your forecast for this time. We're now jumped to a live report from Bryce in Vietnam.
I'm currently standing here in the dense jungle of Vietnam, where the independence movement of Ho Chi Minh is easily seen. The country has been divided into a communist north and a democratic south. The U.S. has sent forces to the south in efforts to contain communism. The air war of 1965 to 1968 is evident on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The U.S. continually bombed it with napalm and targeted major cities. In response to this, the North launched a Tet Offensive in January of 1968. This was a surprise attack during a ceasefire period on the Vietnam New Year. The North targeted 100 cities in the South along with the U.S. Embassy. This resulted in control of every major southern city. U.S. people no longer supported the Vietnam War and wanted us to pull out of it. In 1973, the U.S. ceasefire was put into place, moving all troops from Vietnam. Shortly after, the North took over the South and united the country as a communist whole. That's all from Vietnam. Back to Emily in the studio.
Our studio report tonight focuses on the war in Afghanistan. In the pursuit of spreading communism, the Soviet Union has been providing support to the newly founded communist government in Afghanistan. The communists took over in 1973, and tensions between the government and its people have been growing ever since. Once again, the United States has chosen to intervene in this conflict, but this time only with support in the form of money and weapons. They are aiding the Mujahideen, who are fighting against the communists, as many of those laws go against their traditional Muslim beliefs. Despite the Soviet Union's involvement, the support of the United States and the majority of the Afghan people is allowing the Mujahideen to take back control of the country and government, embarrassing the USSR. Now, let's go back to Bryce with a live report, this time from the Berlin Wall.
I'm Bryce reporting live from the Berlin Wall after its fall. As many viewers know, the wall was built to separate communists from non-communists. After World War II, Germany was divided in half to prevent it from ever gaining as much power as it had during the war. The Soviet Union received the east side, while Britain, France, and the United States shared control of the west. In addition, the capital city was divided into east and west sectors, the wall being built to separate them. The two sides were polar opposites. The East was strictly run communist state with few luxuries, and there was often a lack of necessities such as food. The West, on the other hand, lived a much more pleasant life, even during a time when the Soviets blockaded the city. The U.S. simply used planes to drop necessary supplies into the city. A few of the people from East Berlin managed to escape into the West Side, and saw how much better life was under a capitalist system. This resulted in a large number of people wanting to move from the West and be rid of the Soviet rule. In 1989, the wall was torn down, with Germany being officially reunited in 1990. Only a few pieces, such as one I'm standing here in front of, remain today. To wrap up our night, we send you back to the studio with Emily.
To close our night, we are pleased to inform you that the Cold War has ended. It was a long and stressful time period for all involved parties. The détente was a major sign to the end of the Cold War. It is a list of major treaties and agreements that were made in an attempt to reach peace between the United States and the Soviet Union. However, the major factor in the end of the Cold War was the collapse of the Soviet Union. This began with Mikhail Gorbachev putting policies into place that went against the communist ways. One was the Glasnost policy, which promoted openness and political freedoms. Another, called Perestroika, was the restructuring of the government and economy. Free market reforms were introduced, allowing limited private enterprise, which in turn caused food shortages and bankruptcies. On December 25, 1991, the Soviet Union officially fell, and all satellite nations became independent. The Cold War was over. Some may say that the U.S. won the war, while others can argue that there was no true winner. The important thing is that the world can rest tonight knowing that the idea of mutually assured destruction will not occur. That's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for watching CWN, your Cold War News.